Hello, US 101 late start class. So, a few things I'm going to say before I just do our summary. First of all, I want to remind all of you I do work another job, and it's that I'm doing physical labor a lot of the times. I'm busy throughout the whole entire day that I'm working, and my schedule varies from time to time. So, if you need to get a hold of me, write to me on Canvas. But if you have immediate concerns, you should see my phone number as a contact. I can't always promise that I can, but if you were to text me a quick question, sometimes on my lunch break or on just a regular coffee break, I can maybe answer it for you. So I just want to throw that out there. But if you do text me or call, please stick within business hours, right? And most likely after dinner when I get home, I'm just if I can, I answer emails, but sometimes I'll try to do it in the morning. But I hope that what you're noticing is I do get a hold of you as soon as possible, and I try to be approachable. So I have the Zoom office hours coming up this week. Please take advantage if you think that you're needing some help. There was a little bit of confusion for many of you on the first week, and we do move fast. And we have part 1 and part 2. And so there's just a lot going on, but I promise you, those of you who stick this out with me, who communicate, some of you need to do catch up on getting your work done. You're going to see you can do this, and I'm going to work with you. But you have to do your part, and you have to communicate, and that's the most important thing as well. So don't forget, please, everybody who's looked at my examples on my announcement that showed about essays and the citation expectations are doing great now. And many of you started off not understanding it, and you're doing it. And some of you have still not looked at that, my examples, and we're struggling with that. For the entire semester, you're going to need to stick to it. And it's really simple. Also, because AI will say things like, Zen chapter 3 said da 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 da. And this is the analysis of chapter 3 by Zen. And it is 100% AI. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of doing that. What I'm saying is that is understood what AI can do. So on top of our normal university standards of citation that we need to be doing anyways, now we really need to help crack down and make sure that students are not cutting corners. And how do we do this? The proof is you demonstrating, like where you got the information from, quick for me to follow and find. Done. Okay? I shouldn't have to go over this too much more. We're moving on with this one. But again, contact me in person if you need help. By the way, the same expectation will be on your essay exam coming up in the future. Okay? And I'll talk more about that when it comes. So, real briefly, let's take a summary and look about what we've covered so far. So we've talked about how this land that we're living on was inhabited by other people for a very long time. Centuries. Thousands of years. Long time. And that part of the history has to be acknowledged. And the creation of the United States, like Canada, and like the rest of South America and Central America through Spanish and Portuguese colonization, this is a major and massive part of the history. And it's a part of the history that we in the United States don't like to think about so much. But again, when you're in Modesto, California, you probably don't meet a lot of folks that are indigenous. I am up here in Portland right now. And many folks that you might look at and see that you would think they're from Mexico or El Salvador, they've been here the whole entire time. They're from reservations and tribes like here. Okay? And there's a lot more of a population that really makes this clear to you. And I'm going to always, from time to time, I'm going to bring up this because we don't get to being in California and Oregon without the push west, which is also going to beat the demise of all of the various tribes, former lifestyles, positions, and population numbers that they once had. So that's important. Now, I talked about the Puritans, and I talked about them thinking of themselves like ancient Israelites in the article, right? Now, look, I want to make very clear, religion is very sensitive. I could read some of the uh, explanations in the discussions. Some of you are very well versed in the way that we would look at growing up in the religious tradition, uh, um, how the ancient history of the Israelites would apply to us now, but also in very different kind of ways. Ideas about growth and struggle, and very big, more kind of broad, macro spiritual dimensions. But these verses also were literally about war and conquest and even killing children. Okay, this is a very uncomfortable topic, but that's what the command was in there in Exodus and Joshua. Okay, and it says it in the Hebrew explicitly. Now we have this view still kind of taking place with a sort of eschatology, end times beliefs within the Christian nationalist movements, or what are called Christian Zionist movements, where even the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, was interviewed with Tucker Carlson. I'm not advocating or putting down any of these folks' views right now. I'm explaining just like literally what happened recently. And Mike Huckabee talked about how all the biblical borders that were seen in the Bible, Israel has a right to, including parts that are in Iraq and Lebanon, and of course the West Bank and Gaza and all of that. And so he's articulating this as the U.S. ambassador, because he has this position that where he takes these scriptures literally and then now applies them to the area, the parts of the Middle East. So I'm not going to do much commentary on this right now, other than point out that Americans have always been very much into the biblical tradition and mixing Bible into politics. And I'll let you decide if you think that that's positive or negative right now. But that is a reality, and that's what's been the case for much of our history. Okay, so moving away from that, we then talk about Bacon's Rebellion. Now, there was also interesting is we see that it wasn't inevitable that color race-based slavery was necessarily always going to be the sole form of slavery over here in the United States, or that it wouldn't be as segregated as much in terms of just the focus of it being African slavery. And so we went over the fact that many historians have come to the conclusion that this is what sped up the transition to switch slavery to really solidify the idea of it only being African slavery in the United States. And so I really appreciated that a lot of you, when you looked at the Korean article I sent in on Korean slavery, I didn't actually go into a lot of detail to try to help you connect the dots, but a lot of you understood what I was trying to say. I was trying to show, one, America is not the only one who's was doing slavery. Slavery was a global practice. Zen talks about how slavery was done in Africa, and I believe he even talks about how some of the tribes had slavery. So, first of all, we're putting into these different historical concepts. The different developments of slavery, and so then, so first of all, sorry, I lost my thought. Actually, I was sitting up here in my apartment, and my cousin lives here, and so she was waving to me, and I was like, it's kind of an awkward timing. Like I'm talking about slavery, and then she's waving, and I'm trying not to ignore her, and also like I'm focusing on the subject. This is how it goes sometimes. With video recordings. But anyways, okay. So we covered that. We got that perspective, and then I showed though that, and you all saw there's something different between racial slavery, a racialized slavery, and that chattel slavery. The United States did something different. So we were not the only ones, but we did something unique and in a tragic way, right? Okay, so that was just a good thing to kind of keep in mind. And here's the other side of that too. So, well, I kept my thought going. This was blacks and poor whites uniting to fight against the elites so they could get more land at the expense of the indigenous people here. So this is the other layers to unpack in U.S. history. So just think about that for a moment. Okay, then just to move on to Boston Massacre and the idea of John Adams and the question of law versus mob rule. Isn't this what we've been dealing with, especially now with the question of ICE and the public and how people feel about that, and law and order and justice, and like, is there something more than just a law? If somebody is called illegal, laws can all be like you can't argue with the fact that something is a law. But Americans have been arguing if a law is just or right, or the way that law is handled is right or okay since the beginning. This is an American tradition. And we haven't fully resolved it, right? Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. Also, so then the question is with John Adams. You look at him. Was he consistent? Was he a man of raw integrity, or what? I mean, a revolution is by default an absolute opposition to law and order, right? There's no question around it. So now we're moving into that topic. So we're going to think about what is a revolution, and what does a revolution mean in terms and in regards to like law and order, mob and integrity and justice and all of that. So think about that as we're moving forward. And again, please everyone contact me if you have any questions or issues, and we'll be in touch.